naturally we're very unique to ourselves, no matter how ununique some people seem to feel. For me, black and white is so much more clear. It's so specific, it's so simple, it's so clean. Like when I see a black and white image, I can tell if it's a good black and white image or if it's not. If you don't understand yourself, you're not going to understand what you're putting out in your photography. You're not going to understand what's going wrong when it is start going wrong.
Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome to another episode of the KDigitals podcast, where we interview artists on their origin, their process, and their style. Joining me today is Tariq Johnson, based out of San Diego. How are you doing today, man?
I'm doing pretty good. How you doing?
Doing well, just staying busy. I miss so I'm not from San Diego originally, and I like the gloom. Oh, really? Oh, that should be a conversation we have then. I was going to just say, I like when it's gloomy, and now it's getting sunny again. I'm like, I kind of like it.
I totally agree with you. I'm from Philly, so I'm from the East Coast. But I've lived in San Diego for half my life. So since I'm 24, I've lived here since I was 12. So half East Coast, half West Coast. But I totally agree with you. I love the gloomy weather. When it pops up and it gets too sunny, I'm like, fuck, It was such a good day already. Like, this ruined it.
Yeah. I always tell people, I have more coats than I actually have shirts. And it's like, I can't wear any of them. So I have the same 5 gray t-shirts.
I have nothing. I'm kind of the same with you. I'm with you there.
For sure, man. I want to put a pin. I want to ask you about that, because I just proposed that a lot of people come to San Diego. A lot of people from San Diego that I found aren't from San Diego originally, right? And I found that's pretty interesting. But let me reel back in. The reason why I'm reeling back in, every podcast I always kick off asking artists to identify themselves. I couldn't safely assume you're a photographer, right? But I know, you mentioned, you're a fashion photographer or a portrait photographer. Yeah. How do you like to define yourself?
Definitely, I define myself as a fashion and portrait photographer. That's how I would define it. Because, I work in fashion, but I also love taking portraits, and it doesn't always have to, include fashion as the element. Sometimes just a good portrait is nice. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
What led you into focusing on that versus, being a landscape photographer or a car photographer?
Photography in itself, photography was all accidental for me, actually. So, I was at a point where I used to be a painter. And I was falling out of love with painting. So I found that I just didn't have the ambition or the wherewithal or the patience anymore to be a painter. And I was just trying to find a new way to kind of express myself. And I had dabbled in photography in high school and in college. And I was like, you know what, why not? So my girlfriend had this old Fujifilm camera. I picked it up and I would just walk around downtown doing street photography. So I'd go out for a few hours and just walk around at night and just taking photos of people on the street. And then that eventually snowballed. And then I tried, I did architecture for a short while, real estate. And then I did portraits here and there, but I was I still wasn't sure where that was going to be. And then fashion kind of came along, which I was always pretty fashionable. I always wanted to do something in fashion. And I always felt that fashion is the only industry where it incorporates every form of art to express itself. It's not like other types of genres or creative fields, because it requires all forms of creativity to give the message, and it seems, I guess, limitless in that way. So fashion photography seemed like the appropriate route to kind of keep expanding. I feel like with other forms of photography, you're always kind of boxed in. When you're a landscape photographer, it's okay, what much more can you do? Really, you're taking photos of, landscapes and beautiful scenery. It's endless in the sense that, the earth is constantly giving us super cool stuff, but the earth is also repetitive in the way that it does it, so what happens when, you know what I mean? You go on Instagram, you go through all of those, you see the same types of photos over and over again. Some sunsets are better than others, but you start to see it repeat. Fashion's kind of it's unique in that way that it doesn't always really repeat itself. And when it does, it's always in a new way. So I like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So then, I agree, right? I feel like when you do landscape stuff, for the most part, I'm sure you could understand what you would get once you go out there, right?
And I've done landscape, so
yeah,
I've done that. And I'm very extroverted. I'm very, energetic. I gain energy from people. I thrive when I'm around people. So being a landscape photographer is counterintuitive to who I am, I feel like. in other forms of isolated photography. And that's also what made me fall out of love with painting and drawing. It's because of the isolationist. You have to be an isolationist in that position. A lot of times you're by yourself sitting with a piece of work, or a piece of art that you've been working on, and it's draining. It's almost it's unmotivating. I think people are so unique, and it's really nice to be around more people and kind of pick up off of them, and you learn so much quicker, around them than just playing off your own experiences.
Yeah.
So
then when it comes to like fashion and portrait stuff, right? Because like landscape is pretty straightforward, but when you do the fashion portrait stuff, it's also very competitive, right? And saturated. So like, how do you come up with something more unique or different when probably maybe it's been done before?
I don't even think about it, to tell you the truth. I feel like to think about, like, if you think about it, because nothing's truly original. Like, if we're being really honest, there's always something derived from something else. Even the most original pieces of art has always derived from something else. It's just something that no one knew about. So that's what makes it original. You know what I mean? It's so niche, and such a small sliver of people have information on this one thing that you somehow figured out and made something out of. That's what makes it truly original, because no one knows about it. But if everyone knows about it and you create something, it's not original. The less people know about it, the less original it is. The more original it is. So so I don't think about it. I just do. I try to just stay authentic. I feel like if you kind of, stay kind of true to your own self and the things that you're doing, and just, being authentic, you're just being yourself. If you try to be other people or, interpret things differently, just interpret yourself in a weird way. And, using Instagram as like a way or Instagram or social media to kind of, drive your creativity, you start to pick up habits of other people. You start to pick up their own thing. You start to lose yourself, and you see that a lot. People do imagery and they create imagery, and it's repetition, because they're forgetting to look in themselves. Because people are, naturally we're very unique to ourselves, no matter how ununique some people seem to feel. The truth is that your experiences and the things that you are extremely unique. Yeah. So anything that you create that comes from you is going to be a bit obviously unique. So I think that's what keeps me kind of from thinking about that.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like right now I've started, the past 3 edits I've done the whole crush the blacks a little bit, crush the whites, and make it a little bit fade and put grain on it.
Yeah.
And that's so Instagrammy. I need this is a dark path if I keep doing this, But,
no, I feel that same way. We all have those moments as artists where you start to do something and you're like, am I doing this because I've seen this somewhere? Or am I doing this because this is something that that's me, and it's hard because you have to be, I think now and today, you have to be so much more aware of where your creativity is coming from, that if you're not aware, you'll start to copy other people subconsciously. It won't always be consciously. It'll be totally subconscious. It's just been shit you've been seeing, and you haven't been filtering the stuff that you've been seeing and the information you're taking in. So then you start putting out, stuff that is reflective of that. And then it becomes unoriginal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. That's a good quote. That might go on the Instagram trailer in the meeting. I like that. Well, so one thing I wanted to ask, so on thoughts style and approach, right? It seems like, and maybe it's just an assumption, it seems like you go for more of the black and white color scheme than having color in your photos.
Yes.
How come?
You know what? Simplicity. It's also a mixture of my need to simplify things. So oftentimes, when it comes to photography, I don't like the technical aspects of it. I understand the technical aspects of photography, but I do not like to dwell on them at all. I'd much rather just keep it as simple as possible. Oftentimes, most of my photo shoots, I'm using one light. I'm using one gray backdrop, and I have, I keep it super simple, as simple as can be. And then color can oftentimes be a bit distracting to me. And I haven't quite figured out yet what type of color I really like. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So for me, black and white is so much more clear. It's so specific. It's so simple. It's so clean. When I see a black and white image, I can tell if it's a good black and white image or if it's not. But if I see a color image, I second guess myself often. where I'm looking at an image and I can't quite tell if I like the color or if I'm just, if it's just a pretty image because of the color, which is very different because that can skew things. Because a lot of times if the color is really pretty, which you see all over Instagram, you'll see a bunch of really colorful, bright images. The colors are great, but the image sucks. But you're really, for some reason, you're drawn into the image, but it's only because of the color. Yeah. And I don't want that to happen to me. So I've been playing with more color and trying to figure out what my color is, or how I see color. But it's still something I'm working on. So for now, I've been sticking predominantly with black and white.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you know if you're going to do like black and white before you even edit, or do you like decide once Lightroom's open? Like, okay.
I use Capture One, but I usually always interpret things in black and white. Like when I'm photographing an image, I'm imagining it in black and white. So like I'm not imagining in color, which kind of can mess things up sometimes because I can kind of speed through color a lot of times and not put as much emphasis, even when I know the person or the client might want it in color and they're probably going to predominantly use it in color. My black and white mind takes over and I start to prioritize color. I mean, black and white over color, which is a problem and something I'm like trying to actively work on and try to, work around because colors like black and white is my safe place. And I don't think anything gets done in a safe place.
Can I ask why Capture One? I've only used Lightroom, so I've never the actual photo magazines. They always say Capture One. It's like, okay, maybe there's something more to this I'm just not aware of.
Yeah, I will say Capture One's more technical, but also Capture One, it's more seamless, I would say, because I tether when I'm photographing. So like I'm not going to tether through Lightroom. It's the slowest, most mundane, boring, outdated thing ever. So tethering is the first one. If you tether your photos like on location or in studio or whatever, use Capture One. It's so much smoother. Also, the raw files actually look better. So Capture One produces richer, more true raw files. And the color profiles that are built into Capture One look so much better. Like they're just entirely cleaner. Like if you were to import, if me and you were to sit next to each other, you have your Lightroom open, I have my Capture One, and we both imported the same raw photo. Capture One, the raw photo looks entirely different. Like the way they process raw files is just fantastic, where you get like a truer picture. Whereas Lightroom, it almost seems like they muddy the photo. Like it almost destroys the photo for me. And you have to do more work to bring it closer to, what you shot or what you envisioned. And that's what made me make the switch. Cause I use Lightroom like every photographer ever has used it in the beginning, probably before they used Capture One. And that's what I realized when I started importing RAWs between the two. The files are just so much better. I would say those are probably the main things. And then of course, Capture One, you have more power. So it's because it's more complicated. You can do like layer masking. You can edit photos within Capture One if you don't even want to do Photoshop. And you can really go through, but I feel like it's just so much more seamless. That's been my it's super complicated. It's more complicated, but I think it's worth learning about it. It's a good program.
Yeah, because then like when I take my shots, like I like how the photos look. Like even when I upload, it's a little faded, but when I put it into Lightroom, like once you press develop, it just makes it like super contrast. Like it just kills the color. Like, well, I want it back to the original. I have to fight to make it original and then edit it. And it's like, this is inefficient.
Yeah. So Capture One, you're gonna get that original photo, and it's gonna look really good. Yeah. Like it's gonna look how you got it basically, because it copies the camera profile of what you're shooting with. So like all those profiles are built into Capture One. And the coolest thing I think is that you can, if you wanted a different color profile, so like before I shoot with a Sony A7R4, but before I was shooting with the A7R3 and then the R2 before that. When I was shooting with the R2's colors are gross. Like it's like green and magenta. It's terrible. It's terrible colors. So but the cool thing is in Capture One, you can actually change the color profiles. So like if you wanted like the Canon Mark D or something, 5 Mark D or something, you could change it to that color profile and you get those really nice creamy skin tones that you get for Canon, but you can't get in Sony. So those color profiles are really perfect. It was really cool to be able to do it that way. Before, like the color profiles I like are there, but like if you want to switch it, say you want Fuji colors, you could do a Fuji camera profile, and it'll copy those Fuji colors and apply it to all your images. So I think that's kind of like a cool little thing.
Yep. For sure. Now I want to look at Capture One. That's cool, man. Yeah, because like I said, I look at the magazines, like they kind of just, it feels like they just do this. I'm like, I have Lightroom. I don't know why I would need that, but that makes a lot more sense. The magenta thing, I like how you brought, because saying that my like skin looks a little purpley, like I don't know how to fix that, right? And I just ignore it or fade it. But yeah. Cool. Well, so I want to do a bit of a hard left, but I really want to keep talking to you about the technicals. That's fun. So to step away from photography a bit, do you prefer more like corporate coffee, like Starbucks, or more like craft coffee, like from a local?
I'm definitely like a full-blown coffee connoisseur, like craft coffee all the way to the max. You know, I will drink like Starbucks, of course, because I'm a normal human and Starbucks is closed. But I'm not that, you know, I guess vain or whatever the word is for it. Yeah, but I definitely love me some good craft coffee, like hardcore, like black. Like I love espresso. Like just give me some straight espresso. I love tasting espresso. Yeah, I've probably been to every coffee shop in San Diego that's worth trying, if we're being honest.
Oh,
like
really?
I've been to over 115 coffee shops in like between like San Diego and LA. 115, 120, something like that.
You like go to like blog, like top 5 coffee shops, and like I'm gonna check all those boxes.
You know, I will say like it's partly me, but my girlfriend, she's so much better at it than me. Like she just is so good at finding places. Like, so like I definitely like piggyback on a lot of things that she does, or that she finds. So yeah, that's probably what happens.
Yeah, no, for sure. Do you think the coffee, I don't know if it's a thing, but do you think the coffee is better in here or like more in Europe?
Better in Europe for sure. It depends. Okay, it depends. But it depends. But Europe is like, you get some good coffee there. Like the thing is, most places serve good coffee. Whereas like San Diego or even the United States, most places don't. So like you have to kind of like pick through and be like, okay, that's pretty good, you know, and then some places like, okay, that's okay. And, you know, but most places I find that like average place you get coffee at, it's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
It's just good. Like you're like, okay, that's solid. You know, even the worst places is like, oh, that's solid. You know, but like then you go here and it's like, nah, that's bad.
Oh wow, like it's right away.
Yeah, like it's right away. It's like, no, that's not good.
Yeah.
So I would say on average, you're gonna find better coffee in Europe, whereas here you'll find good coffee, but it's in smaller spurts.
Okay. So what makes a coffee then? Like if I just like got 5 black coffees put on the table, like tell me which, like, can you tell me what's better? Are you like, oh, easy?
Yeah, probably. Well, it depends the type of coffee you like, but I like light roasts and I guess some dark roasts, and I like all coffee, but like light roasts are my favorite. For me, anything that's light, probably like I love stuff with like vanilla, like hints of vanilla or caramel, or even stuff that just kind of, I've had a few different coffees. There's one from Moniker Coffee and I forgot where it's at, somewhere in Point Loma. And they do like a really light roast coffee that tastes, it's almost like a tea, but it's coffee. It's so light that it almost tastes like a tea, and it's very flavorful. You get like hints of vanilla, hints of like cinnamon, and it's just super light. And it's so strong and good. But it's still coffee, but because it's the coffee's so thin and light, it tastes kind of like a tea, and I fucking love that. That's like a good coffee for me. Yeah.
No, for sure. So on that note, though, I kind of want to keep. I know public photography, right? So I'm trying to bridge the two. If you go to your website, you look like the different like styles you have. I think one. I don't know if it's. I should check if it's like the food aisle, but you have a like. I can assume like a red velvet chocolate, whatever. That's like looks like there's like blood splattered, and it's like a red table.
Oh yeah, so my girlfriend actually made that.
Oh really?
Yeah, so my girlfriend, she used to be a pastry chef. So she for when I first started doing photography, I would photograph her food, you know. So that was that one's actually an edible, by the way. It's God, what is it? I forgot what it's called. It's like that's called a chocolate pod or something. I don't know. But yeah, it's basically that with like the raspberry blood splatter everywhere. It looks super cool. And I shot that like in my like house, like in like a small one of my extra rooms, and it was great. Like single light source. Yeah. But yeah, because she does pastry and stuff, like I'll photograph her food and I'll have random photos, and that's just how that works. Yeah.
Do you feel like there's like a similar approach to doing like portraits to the same thing as photographing food, where it's like, oh, this is a whole different ball game, kind of?
Oh, I think it's entirely different because again, food does require two people, so that's kind of different than like other forms of photography. But no, it's kind of it's different because you kind of you move food and you can position it, but you have all the control basically. Whereas like with portrait, you don't always have the control. Like you do, there's a level of control that you do have, but you never can control the person that's in front of your camera. You're always at the whim of their emotions and their personality. And you kind of have to, that's where you kind of have to flow. With food, you can just do whatever. You're like, all right, I don't like the way it looks from that angle, turn around. Like you know, but so it's like.
Yeah. So what?
Yeah, I would say so.
Oh, sorry, I cut you off. Go ahead.
No, you're all good. You're all good.
So like what inspires you? Like, are there artists you look up to? Do you just like see ads on the wall and you're like, oh, I want to recreate that? Like, how do you push yourself to?
Oh God. I'm definitely inspired by past photographers. So like obviously like great fashion photographers like Peter Lindbergh, Richard Avedon, Nick Knight. Those are just off the top, some of them. Helmut Newton. Those are like, you know, just like huge fashion photographers. And they also do a lot of those photographers predominantly do black and white as well, which always made me feel more comfortable about shooting predominantly in black and white, because I feel like people always like, well, where's the color, you know? But then I like think back and I'm like, well, Helmut Newton is extremely famous and is one of the most renowned photographers ever. And he shot predominantly in black and white film, you know? So it's like, why can't I? Same thing for Peter Lindbergh. I've only seen like 3 colored photos from the guy, in his entire career. And he shot everyone. So it's like that kind of helped with that. And then I take a lot of inspiration from film. So TV, television, film, movies, whatever. Cinematography is fantastic. And I think that's when I do start to do more color, that's where my color is probably going to be derived from, is from color grading of films. Because that's mainly what I've been looking at for color. That's been how films do it. But film is definitely one of my biggest ones, I would say. Even though I don't think my work is necessarily cinematic, it will probably go in that direction as I kind of develop more.
Yeah, no, I can see that. So are you I don't know if you done are you gonna do more like videos, or you ever thought about doing videos or stuff like that?
You know, I've thought about doing video, but I've strayed away from it just out of the fact that like I haven't mastered photography. How am I going to throw a video into the mix? You know, I can't imagine trying to take on both and doing them both really well. I don't think I work like that. I don't think I work when I'm dealing with work best when I'm dealing with too many things at once. I definitely think quality starts to diminish, and like quality is really important to me. So if I think it's going to hinder the quality of my overall work, I would rather not even do it. But I do think it could be done in the future. I think because video is such a unique way of expressing things, and you can create it's so much quicker. I think like the feeling is so much quicker when you see a video than when you see a photo. Photos are like interpretation, and I think video, you can almost create interpretations. You know, you can almost control it a little bit more, like how people are going to view it. So like you can, like, honestly, like if I guessed how most people would feel about a video, you could probably write down those guesses and most people would probably feel that way. It'll probably be like 5 different ways that people feel about it, and it'll be those 5 things. With photos, I don't always know. Photos, it's like, I have no idea how people could interpret that. People like, I look at photos and I'm like, I hate that photo. And then people love it. And I'm like, what? Like video, like most people can agree on a good movie and a bad movie. You know what I mean? Like there's like, obviously the biases, but for the most part, you watch a movie and you're like, well, I felt kind of okay about that, you know? Or you can be like, I mean, most people will agree. But photos, I don't think there's that same level of agreement.
No, yeah. Sure.
I don't.
I mean, there are times
definitely.
Sorry, go ahead. I keep cutting you off. Like I'm gonna blame Zoom.
Oh, you're totally fine.
Yeah.
You keep going.
No, I mean, like I've been there where like, and I've like, we'll do shoots. I'm like taking photos and like, oh, these aren't good. Like, come on, Chris. And like, I'll show someone like, and I'll say like, I don't think they're that good. And like, oh my God, they're great. I'm like, oh, they are great. You're right. Yeah, I knew that. Right. And like, oh, good. That feedback is good, right? But it's also like, oh yeah, you never know what's a good photo, right? At times.
You don't always know. Like sometimes like in people, the problem is people also don't know what a good photo is. Like, so it's like, it's hard to find like good people who actually know, because you can ask most people and they'll be like, oh, it's a great photo. And it's like, well, I guess your output doesn't even matter because the photo sucks. Like, if we're being honest. But I've been trying to find people too, like find people that like have, but that's also a scary thing to do, to find someone that like really critique your work and shit on you. But I've been wanting to do that, I think.
Yeah.
Like, this is a bad photo, Tariq. Like, okay, thank you for telling me. Let me go cry a little bit.
Yeah, like I appreciate that. Yeah. No, I feel it, man. So when it comes to looks and stuff, right? Because I feel like you definitely have your own like lane, and you're doing a good job at it. Are there anything that you haven't done before that like you've been itching to do, like in the photography realm? Like, say, I don't know, maybe instead of like more studio stuff, more, you know, bikini stuff, or instead of more studio stuff, fashion, but more outside. Like, I don't know, I'm just making up stuff, but is there anything like on
Yeah,
your
like stuff. Yeah. I have been wanting to shoot outside more. I will say that because I'm predominantly in my studio all the time and I always shoot in the studio. It's kind of tough because people mainly hire me for that because that's the work that I put out. So like when people hit me up, they're like, hey, you know, I want you to photograph me in a studio on a gray backdrop. That's what I do. So it I have kind of put myself in a box in that way, but I'm slowly going to branch out of that. And I think I want to expand, you know, the type of studio work that I do, whether it's building more sets and props and things like that, and doing stuff that's a little bit more cinematic or, you know, just a little grander. And then going outside, because I feel like my work does diminish a bit. The quality of it does diminish a little bit when I'm outside. And I want it to be reflective. I want like my studio work and my outdoor photography to be the same. I want them to be like, when people see the work, they should be reflective of both. And I think a lot of times, because I think that makes a good photographer, or the photographers that I like that do good studio work and good outdoor work, it's just insane. Like it always blows my mind that they can do both like that. Like somehow create amazing high fashion images in the studio and then go outside and do the same thing. And it's like, how? Because going outside is so different. Like it's not all, you don't always, like the scenery can change everything. Mm-hmm. Like it doesn't always look like a fashion image. It could not look good. It could just be, there's so many elements that come into play that can really inhibit it being a good image. So definitely going outside, I think. I need to get out the studio.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, that makes sense. But like, you have good studio stuff too. Like, you see yourself like, oh, okay, man, I see what you're doing.
Yeah,
that's good.
Yeah.
Well, hey, I know we're nearing time, so I wanted to ask like one last question. Seeing as you've done a lot with yourself, you've been involved in a lot of different art, and eventually fell into photography, and really doing good at that. For a photographer that's starting out or trying to get their engine going, what's one piece of advice you could give them that you probably wish you knew when you were first starting?
Ooh. I don't. You know, I wouldn't say that I didn't know. I knew from the get-go. So I'm going to give you something that I still knew always, even when I was first starting out, because I don't care about technical shit. Honestly, it's just practice. Like when I went into photography, I think that's what I've like. If we're being honest, I've only been a photographer for about 3.5 years, and I've only been professional for about a year. So, and the reason I was able to go professional so quickly was because of practice and diligence and being precise and caring about the work I'm putting out, the quality. So I think if there's a new photographer, they should definitely focus on they should look inward first off, because if you don't understand yourself, you're not going to understand what you're putting out in your photography. You're not going to understand what's going wrong when it is start going wrong, because it will go wrong. Because mine has gone wrong more than I can imagine. And it's usually because I wasn't looking inward or closely enough at myself. So I think looking at yourself and then practice. You have to trial and error. You have to see what works, what doesn't, what makes a good image. All those things come into play. So I think practice, looking at yourself. Okay, last one. studying other photographers
Yeah.
because I think that's super important too. Because like I wish I would have. That's something I do wish I would have done. I wish I would have studied more photographers earlier on instead of just guessing. But now that I'm at a point of understanding, photography and things like that, I can look at images and tell how lighting was done, or get a good idea of the sense of a photographer and what they were going for. But the better you have understanding of the masters or the greats or the biggest people who did photography, the better idea you'll have when you start to make your own work, and then you'll be able to incorporate those ideas and those things that you've been paying attention to into your own work. And then people look at your work and they'll go, wow, those look really great. So yeah, I would say that's it. Yeah.
Very cool. I appreciate that, man. That's a cool interview.
Yeah.
Where can people follow you? Where can they see your work at?
Mainly Instagram. I think Instagram is the easiest way to do it. Instagram's a new business card. That's what I always say. You don't need business cards anymore. Also, new photographers, don't get business cards. Just get your Instagram handle, put it on a piece of paper, and you'll be good. Who the hell? What am I going to do with a business card? Tell me. But yes, it is. My Instagram is at ITS Tariq Johnson. So it's Tariq Johnson. Yeah, and you can see all my work there. You can click my website from there and check things out. Yeah, it's going to be changing a lot too, so it should be cool.
For sure. Well, hey man, thank you for joining us today, and thank you for everyone for joining us as well. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe so we can grow this channel. I'm gonna stop the recording, and thank you YouTube, thank you Spotify, and I'll see everyone later.